Okay, I'm gonna try this again because I think the video dropped, or at least that it interrupted it was interrupted on my end. It's kind of confusing because there are times where obviously the video is buffering for other people, but I can't see it. But this time I actually saw the internet net connection get severed. So I'm gonna try this again, and I was talking about some of the restrictions that were going to be imposed in New York. So seniors have to remain indoors. They can go outside for exercise, solitary exercise, so they can't exercise in groups. So Chinese, the elderly Chinese people who do Tai Chi or practice Tai Chi, they're not going to be able to do that any longer. But you can go out for exercise if you're by yourself. Don't visit households with multiple people. So unless you're visiting someone who lives by themselves, you're not. Oh, happy birthday, Miss Bluebird. Um, happy happy birthday. Uh, yeah. Well, thanks for coming. Anyone who is watching uh, after the last abortive video. Um, but yeah, hi Inky. So remain indoors. Don't visit any households with multiple people. Sorry. All vulnerable persons should wear a mask when in the company of others to the greatest extent possible. Everyone in the presence of vulnerable people should wear a mask. Always stay at least 6 feet away from individuals. Do not take public transportation unless urgent and absolutely necessary. There was a funny article yesterday in the Gothamist, which is a really New York centric newspaper or online newspaper, and they had an entire piece lamenting the plight of subway performers. So basically, those people who do showtime, who get into the middle of a subway car and start pole vaulting and just pole dancing around a pole and uh, b-boying all over the car, uh, doing kicks a few inches from your face as you're trying to read or look at your phone. They had an entire article lamenting the fact that these people were not making any money. They're probably one of the most annoying parts of commuting in New York City. But the Gothamist had an entire piece lamenting the fact that they weren't making money, as opposed to the hundreds of thousands of people who work in other jobs that don't involve endangering people's safety and importuning them for cash while they're captive, while they're trapped inside of a confined space. but but they were sad because these people who are basically glorified panhandlers could not make a living because there were no marks, there were no tourists, and there were no locals there to give them money. And one of them was really sad because he had only made $2 that entire day. Governments will get, yeah, they are. It's funny. Tim Dillon was talking about this. He has a podcast, and he was half jokingly he called it a soft rollout for martial law. It's like when you have a soft opening for a restaurant, you don't put the sign grand opening, and you don't invite reporters. You just decide to open one day just to gauge public or consumer sentiment. Hi, Scott. And he called this a soft rollout for martial law. Just all of these public officials and media personalities and reporters just kind of dipping their toe and trying to trying to test out how the public would react. So things like um, I think Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, said that it would it he did he gave an interview where he actually touched on this. He didn't use the term martial law, but he hinted around this. Um, yeah, Manhattan is pretty empty, and it's probably going to become even emptier now since you basically. I'll just read some of the what I didn't what I didn't get to. So one of the other questions is what are essential businesses, and it defines essential healthcare operations here as research and laboratory services, hospitals, walk-in care health facilities, emergency veterinarian and livestock services. So so vets um, are still operating. In fact, one one of my friends on Facebook talked about a veterinarian that was taking care of his that helped him out with his dog, one of his pets. Uh, Elder care, obviously medical wholesale and distribution, home healthcare workers or aides for the elderly, doctor and emergency dental, nursing homes or residential healthcare facilities or congregate care facilities, medical supplies and equipment manufacturers and providers. So all those are pretty obvious. And what are essential infrastructure? Those include utilities, including power generation, fuel supply and transmission, public water and wastewater, telecommunications, and data centers, of course. Airports, airlines, although in terms of passenger travel, there's not much of that. Transportation, I mean cargo, obviously. Transportation infrastructure such as bus, rail, or for hire vehicles. So I'm assuming you can still take an Uber or a Lyft if you're here, but garages. Um, and again, I don't know what the use of garages are now since there's there's virtually no traffic in New York City, or especially Manhattan. Hotels and places of accommodation, essential manufacturing, including food processing, manufacturing agents, including all foods and beverages, chemicals, medical equipment, instruments, pharmaceuticals, sanitary products. So if you can find toilet paper, that's because people that's one of the businesses that hasn't been shuttered. Telecommunications, microelectronics, semiconductor, agriculture, and farms. And there are some farms. Well, I think there's a working farm in New York City, but most of the farms are upstate. Household paper products, essential retail, including grocery stores, including all food and beverage stores that are allowing liquor stores to remain open. Pharmacies, convenience stores, farmers markets, gas stations, restaurants slash bars, but only for takeout and delivery. So apparently there were some restaurants you could still dine in. A few days ago, that's a thing of the past. Now, hardware and building material stores, essential services include trash and recycling collection, processing and disposal. So at least it's not going to look like it did when sanitation workers went on strike. Mail and shipping services, laundromats, building cleaning and maintenance, child care services, auto repair, warehouse distribution and fulfillment. Amazon is hiring, although I'm not sure who would want to work at Amazon right now. Funeral homes, crematoriums, and cemeteries. A bit morbid, but those are going to be in business. Storage for essential businesses, animal shelters, news media. So financial institutions, including banks, insurance, payroll, accounting services related to financial markets, providers of basic necessities to economically disadvantaged populations, including homeless shelters and congregate care facilities. One of the questions was, what are you going to do with these huge homeless populations, particularly not just New York City, but especially places in San Francisco or Los Angeles, where you have one of the biggest skid rows in the entire United States, or the United States. I think in the continent, really, it's gigantic. And what are you going to do with these places where there are already infectious diseases? It's already a public health crisis. So food banks, human services providers whose function includes the direct care of patients in state licensed or funded voluntary programs, the care, protection, custody, and oversight of individuals both in the community and in state licensed residential facilities, those operating community shelters, and other critical human services agencies providing direct care or support. Construction, including skilled trades such as electricians, plumbers, other related construction firms and professionals for essential infrastructure or for emergency repair and safety purposes. There was actually a story in the New York Post about construction workers going to work sick, and someone pointed out in on Facebook, it's one of the few real productive industries right now in New York City. Defense and national security related operations supporting the U.S. government or a contractor to the U.S. government. So if you work for the Pentagon, you're good. Essential services necessary to maintain the safety, sanitation, and essential operations of residences or other essential businesses, including law enforcement. Although, as I said in another video, a lot of cities there's some simply not enforcing quote unquote low level crimes. They said that the crime rate was still increasing, although not as rapidly as it was before the epidemic. Fire prevention and response, building code enforcement, security, emergency management and response, building cleaners or janitors, general maintenance, whether employed by the entity directly or a vendor, automotive repair, and disinfection. That's a big industry right now. Vendors that provide essential services or products, including logistics and technology support, child care and services, logistics, technology support for online services, child care programs and services, government owned or leased buildings, essential government services, and it defines what essential is above, but it's also kind of nebulous. What about houses of worship? And it says houses of worship are not ordered closed, but strongly recommended not to hold congregate services because, of course, you can't forbid people from exercising their First Amendment rights, but it's strongly discouraged. Um, yeah, it's interesting. New York City, particularly, it started under the Bloomberg administration, but under De Blasio as well. There are a lot more aggressive panhandlers. It's I wouldn't necessarily call it homeless people because uh, some people tend to lump homeless people into this just generic, this general amorphous group, and panhandlers are usually just a very small segment of the homeless population, but they're the most visible because they come up and importune you for money. They're very aggressive in they're in your face. So a lot of people just associate them with the homeless population, but they're a very um, I mean, it's not a microscopic percentage, but they're a minority of the number of people that are actually homeless. But yeah, that the problem of panhandling has become a lot worse over the past, I would say, 7 or 8 years, but particularly under the De Blasio administration, it's kind of harkening back to the Dinkins administration. For the people who remember that, he was the successor to Mayor Koch, and the squeegee men. That was one of the prime issues in the '93 mayoral election. So yeah, today the homeless, the panhandlers, the people who are there is like a certain segment of the homeless population that's become very aggressive. Um, and yeah, they've that and the population in general, the homeless population in general has increased. Um, it's kind of interesting. The San Francisco is sort of a case study in this. They pursued all of these policies to supposedly help the homeless population, but all it did was attract people to come there and rely on the government and the things that they were offering, and a lot of them were not gen- genuinely in need. It was just people basically spanging. So, oh, that's good, Scott. I'll check that out once this is over, and I am gonna wrap up. I just wanted to start another stream because I think the last one was interrupted, at least on my end. I'm not sure if that was if the rest of you saw it, but I'm glad everyone came. Alejandro, Inky, Miss Bluebird, happy birthday! Hi, Miss Picky. Um, God bless, and I will see you all next time.